This news has been brought to you by A1 Science, Car Time and Concord Travels.
Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Alex Pereira-Rivero.
And I'm Marcia Delafay with tonight's top headlines. Tonight on NTV Houston News at 10, an immigration rights organization confirms arrests were made in the Houston area by ICE agents.
President Trump is responding after tweets that said 4 progressive congresswomen should leave the country if they're so unhappy. Some within his own party called him out, but the president insists it was not meant to be racist.
Millions of shoppers around the world took part in the second day of Amazon's Prime Day, but the company's employees are protesting what they say are poor work conditions and Amazon's ties to ICE ahead of a fierce debate between immigration activists.
A Virginia state judge hands a second life sentence to the man who rammed his vehicle at a crowd of protesters in Charlottesville.
Federal prosecutors today announced no charges will be filed against any New York City police officer involved in the chokehold death of Eric Gardner.
Iran's supreme leader is vowing to respond to Britain's seized Iranian oil tanker after reports the tanker was bound for Syria.
And we're celebrating 50 years since the historic journey to the moon began. Stay tuned for video of the landing and a closer look at astronaut Buzz Aldrin's spacesuit put on display at the Smithsonian. Coming up only on NTV Houston. Immigration rights organization FIEL has confirmed 6 people were arrested in the Houston area by ICE agents yesterday. This all happened and was confirmed by witnesses at the El Paraiso apartments in Southwest Houston. A woman who lives at the apartment said she saw the agents around 6:45 in the morning. President Donald Trump doubled down on his attacks on 4 progressive congresswomen for suggesting that they should leave or could leave the country if they're so unhappy. At the White House at his America Products meeting, the president took questions from reporters in which he was asked about his recent tweets in which he said the 4 should go back to the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came, adding that they hate America and Israel.
As far as I'm concerned, if you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave. And that's what I say all the time. That's what I said in a tweet, which I guess some people think is controversial. A lot of people love it, by the way. A lot of people love it. But if you're not happy in the U.S., if you're complaining all the time, very simply, you can leave. You can leave right now. When I hear the statements that they've made, and in one case you have somebody that comes from Somalia, which is a failed government, a failed state, who left Somalia, who ultimately came here, and now is a congresswoman who's never happy, says horrible things about Israel, hates Israel.
Trump did not mention names in his initial Sunday tweets targeting progressive Democrats. He appeared to reference Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib, who all have been critical and have also said harsh things about Trump and the current Democratic House leaders.
Senator Lindsey Graham was one of the first to weigh in, saying at a Fox News interview on Monday that while he agreed with Trump's criticism of the 4 congresswomen's politics, he thought the president should knock it down a notch and avoid getting personal in his attacks on them, saying, quote, they are American citizens, they want an election, take on their policies.
He went on to say that, quote, we all know that AOC and this crowd are a bunch of communists. They hate Israel and they hate our country, but knowing that, the president should aim higher. Meanwhile, the 4 congresswomen accused President Trump of trying to sow division and distract attention from what they criticize as failed policies on immigration and health care. Millions of shoppers around the world are participating in Amazon's Prime Day. The online retailer is offering deals on more than 1 million items today. Amazon has been holding their Prime Day now for 5 years. While Amazon shoppers look for deals, Amazon workers are speaking out. Employees are protesting across the United States and Europe over working conditions and other issues.
In New York, people rallied outside Amazon CEO's Jeff Bezos' New York apartment, and in Seattle, protesters gathered outside Amazon's headquarters. Some of the issues employees are highlighting include warehouse conditions in which they say employees are overworked and that sometimes conditions are not safe and that they don't have possibilities to get promoted.
Amazon has responded by saying they provide a safe working environment, have increased hourly wage to $15 an hour. There have also been calls to protest Amazon's ties to ICE, but the company's relationship with the agency is unclear simply because they have not disclosed who they're partnered with. But there are folks who argued that they are involved.
Does he need more money? No. Does he need more blood money? Amazon right now is giving cloud services to the Department of Homeland Security amongst other governmental agencies. Shame on them, because they continue enabling ICE to find, detain, and deport our people, immigrants and migrants that are attempting to come, fleeing, being forced to flee from their countries.
Attack for mass deportation.
A Virginia state judge handed out a second life sentence to the man who plowed his car through a crowd of protesters in Charlottesville 2 years ago.
In June, a federal judge had given 22-year-old James Alex Field a life sentence. Fields pleaded guilty in March to federal hate crimes as part of an agreement that eliminated the death penalty. The incident left a woman dead and dozens injured. The two sentences will run consecutively. According to a federal indictment, Fields had expressed his belief of white supremacy and even admiration of the social and racial policies of Adolf Hitler in Nazi-era Germany. Breaking today, federal prosecutors will not bring charges against any New York City police officer involved in the death of Eric Gardner.
NYPD officer Daniel Pantaleo placed Gardner at a chokehold while attempting to arrest him in 2014. Gardner, who had been selling cigarettes, died after telling officers, quote, "I can't breathe." The Justice Department met with the Gardner's family today, who held a news conference alongside Reverend Al Sharpton. Coming up next, new threats by Iran. The country's supreme leader is vowing to respond to Britain's seized Iranian oil tanker after reports the tanker was bound for Syria despite EU sanctions.
And the first confirmed case of Ebola in Congo, the city of Goma on edge after fears the deadly virus could have spread to the more than 2 million people who live there. Stay with us. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said today the country would respond to Britain's piracy over the seizure of an Iranian oil tanker. The tanker was captured in Gibraltar by British Marines on suspicion that it was breaking EU sanctions by taking oil to Syria. In a statement, Ayatollah said, quote, "Evil Britain commits piracy and steals our ship. Those who believe in our system will not leave such evil deed unanswered."
British Foreign Minister Jeremy Hunt told his Iranian counterpart over the weekend that Britain would facilitate the release of the detained Grace 1 oil tanker if Iran guarantees it would not go to Syria. But Tehran denies the tanker was taking oil to it in the first place. European countries do not have sanctions against Iran, but have had them in place against Iran's ally Syria since 2011, and have been considering imposing sanctions over recent tensions with the West. New out of Congo, the Congolese Health Ministry is confirming the first Ebola case in the city of Goma in Congo, leaving everyone worried about the possibility of exposure and spreading in the city, home to more than 2 million people.
It's reported the first confirmed case is a pastor who became infected during a visit to the town of Butembo. Officials there have been in constant preparation of the disease arrival by setting up hand-washing stations and informing the public to not share any personal items. On Monday, the World Health Organization warned that if the disease takes root in the densely populated city near the Rwandan border, the risk of the virus spreading severely increases. More than 1,600 people in eastern Congo have died as the virus has spread in areas too dangerous for health teams to access.
A 4-story building collapsed today in Mumbai, killing at least 4 so far.
Dozens were trapped in the rubble, and it's feared that 10 to 12 families are among those still missing. The building was located in a crowded area of Mumbai and is the second collapse in less than 10 days.
Police, firefighters, and local residents were all taking part in assisting the rescue operations, while neighboring buildings were evacuated earlier today.
The collapse of the building was likely caused by the heavy monsoon rains that have led to multiple building collapses over the past years, as well as landslides.
In El Salvador, the woman sentenced to 30 years in prison for a suspected abortion was ordered to return to court for a hearing, even after she was released after spending 33 months behind bars.
Evelyn Hernandez was convicted of aggravated homicide 2 years ago when she was just 19 years old under the country's tough abortion laws. Hernandez's defense said at the time that she did not know she was pregnant when she suffered severe abdominal pain and fainted in her bathroom. She was charged after the body of the fetus was found in the toilet. On Monday, Hernandez told media gathered outside a courtroom that she was hopeful the current court hearing would turn out positively for her. She added that she's innocent and she had been raped by a man.
Under Salvadorian law, a woman suspected of having an abortion can be charged with murder even if the pregnancy is the result of rape, incest, or when the woman's life is at risk. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, a large fire breaks out at a music festival in Croatia.
And we're celebrating 50 years since the historic journey to the moon began. Stay tuned for video of the landing as well as a closer look at astronaut Buzz Aldrin's spacesuit put on display at the Smithsonian. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Let's take you now to Croatia, where video from overnight shows some massive flames at a music festival. 10,000 people started running for their lives when the flames broke out. Rapper Tyga was scheduled to headline last night's show, but it was immediately canceled. So far, no reports of any injuries, and it's still unclear how the fire got started and whether that festival will go on as planned. Sad news out of the boxing world. In the world of sports, Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, considered to be one of the greatest boxers in history, the best pound-to-pound fighter in the world for about half a decade in the early 80s and early 90s, was killed in a car accident as he was crossing the street, apparently. He was struck by a car and died on the scene. He was only 55 years old.
The accident happened in Virginia Beach. Whitaker was a world champion in 4 divisions. He retired in 2001 after a 44-1 record, which included 17 knockouts. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2007.
And I mean, really, before Floyd Money Mayweather, it was actually Pernell Whitaker who dominated the boxing sport. And it's incredibly sad news. The driver who struck Whitaker did remain at the scene of the accident. The crash is still under investigation, and it's unknown if any charges will be filed. 50 years ago today, a historic journey began.
That's right. We're talking about the first moon landing back in July 16, 1969. Here it is. The Apollo 11 took off. Days later, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon.
Without a doubt, it's one of the most defining moments in human history, with Houston Mission Control at the center of the action. History was written right here at NASA by everyday people who accomplished the extraordinary. And today, for the first time in 13 years, the spacesuit astronaut Neil Armstrong wore in his mission to the moon went on display to the public at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum.
The ceremony was attended by Armstrong's son Rick, who unveiled it along with Vice President Mike Pence, who recalled how the U.S. was so deeply divided in the late 1960s, but came together in pride when Armstrong became the first man to walk on the moon.
On top of the contributions to science and human understanding, for that brief moment, the man who wore this suit brought together our nation and the world. Now, true to their creed, astronauts have never liked being called heroes, and the man who wore this suit was especially resistant to such labels. But if Neil Armstrong was not a hero, then there are no heroes.
While the original boots worn by the Apollo 11 astronauts were left on the moon because of weight concerns, the Smithsonian does have the boots worn by astronauts on the Apollo 17, which were brought back to Earth. And it's incredible what we were able to accomplish 50 years ago, and I think we're all eager to see what's coming up in this future of space in the years to come. And again, one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind.
This Saturday, Houston will host the clash between iconic international soccer clubs. The city hopes to prove why it's standing as the worthy World Cup host city come 2026. The
matchup between both mega teams, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, will be at the NRG Stadium, where thousands are expected to show up. The clash is part of the International Champions Cup, a multi-match exhibition pitting some of the best clubs in Europe. And if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, you better hurry, because when they're gone, they are gone. And yesterday, German champs Bayern Munich arrived in Los Angeles to begin their preseason tour in the States. The team will go up against Arsenal in the friendly game in Carson tomorrow before facing off against Real Madrid in Houston this Saturday. They will play AC Milan in Kansas City on July 23rd before returning to Germany.
Most of us stayed dry today. Rain chances were low, but the heat was in full force.
And it shows absolutely no signs of settling down. A big ridge of high pressure will keep us largely dry for the remainder of the week. Here's your 7-day forecast.
Once again, we'd like to thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Alex Pereira Rivero.
And I'm Marcia De La Fe. Remember, you can download our NTV Houston app for more.
Have a good night.